So here's the truth. There is one question that keeps almost every online business owner I know up at night. It's a question that most online business owners spend the majority of their time thinking about, reflecting on, trying to figure out how to solve in their business. What is that question? How do I get more leads? Maybe you've asked yourself this question. You probably have if you've been running your business for a while. The truth is, there's so much information out there when it comes to figuring out how to grow your business, how to increase your lead flow, how to get more clients and sales through the work that you do. And yet, if you break it down and you look at it on a foundational level, there's really only 3 sources of traffic that you can tap into in order to increase the leads coming into your business. And once you know what these are, it will make the journey of growing your business so much simpler. It will cut away all of the confusion and it will give you a clear path forward. So you know exactly what you need to be focused on moving forward in order to increase your income, to make more money, to sign more clients, to sell more stuff online, whatever it is that you do. That is what we're going to talk about today. Super excited to share this with you. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about this is because when I look back over my own journey in entrepreneurship, when I really started getting into online marketing back in 2016, my first real official online business, I was running a business for musicians, teaching other musicians how to record and mix their own music online. I have a background in music. I studied audio engineering in college. And so I came out of that program and I started helping other people make records. And I was like, I need to teach this. There are other people out there that could learn from this. So I started this business online, trying to teach the things that I had learned to other people. And in the early days of that journey, I remember spending so much time watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, going out and reading blogs, trying to figure out how to market myself. And all I saw were tactics. You could do a Facebook group, you could do ads, you could do a YouTube channel, you could do so many different things. And it was overwhelming. And I remember trying so many different things and bouncing from tactic to tactic. Like so many of the entrepreneurs that I work with, it's like they come to me and it's like we got like the spaghetti method going on. My mentor, Scott Oldford, calls it the spaghetti method. I love this phrase. It's like you're throwing a million different things against the wall trying to figure out what sticks. And maybe nothing's really working. Or maybe you're not even sure what's working. Or maybe you just don't entirely know what you should be throwing up against the wall in the first place. And these 3 sources of traffic that I'm going to share with you today, once you understand what these are, it makes it so much simpler. So you don't have to do this. You can say, okay, now I know what to focus on. And instead of focusing on the tactics all day, which is, I think where most online entrepreneurs spend the majority of their time focused on and thinking about. What's the next shiny tactic? What's the next, AI crazy tool that I'm going to use to grow my business? What's the new shiny thing that's going to be here this week and gone the next week? If there's anything I've learned through 18 plus years of building businesses, it's that the tactics come and go, but the principles stay the same. And once you can understand those principles, you can succeed with almost any tactic out there. And that's why I'm excited, again, to share this with you today, because we're going to be talking about those principles. I want to share with you 3 sources of traffic that you can tap into, regardless of what kind of business you're running, that will make the journey of increasing your lead flow a million times easier. Now, this is a small piece of my 3-day marketing workshop, which if you're looking for clarity on how to dial in your marketing, if you're looking for an action plan, if you're looking for the clarity on what your right next steps are to grow your business online, this marketing workshop is hands down, other than our high-level programs, this is hands down the best workshop that I've ever put together in my entire life on marketing. It's just, there's so much value in there. It literally drives me crazy because people are going to listen to this and some people are going to buy it and some people won't. And if you don't, you literally be missing out on like the best thing ever. You can get it on my website right now. You go to jasonmoss.com. There's a link that says workshop at the top of the page. Go check that out. You can buy it. You can go through the recordings today. You get instant access. There's just so much value in there. And what we're going to be talking about today is really just a small piece of what I covered over those 3 days of deep dive training inside that workshop. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive in. So 3 sources of traffic you can use to grow your business. I used to think there were millions. I used to think there were so many different ways that you could grow your business, get more leads, but the truth is there's really only 3. And this is relevant for you regardless of what kind of business you're running, regardless of what your niche is. Only 3 sources of traffic. The first is buy, the second is borrow, and the third is create. I'll say that again: buy, borrow, and create. These are the only 3 ways you can get more leads in your business. Again, regardless of what business you're running. So in our episode today, I want to break these down in detail: buy, borrow, and create. And I want to show you what each of these are, how you can use them, how I've been able to leverage them in my business, and also some of the pros and cons to each of them. It's not that there is one that is right for everyone, or there is one that is better than all the rest. The best businesses out there use all of these and tap into all these. And I've experimented with all of these over the course of my journey. So let's talk about these in detail. The first is buy. Essentially, what this is when you go out there and you take your money and you trade it for attention and you convert that attention into leads. As an example, maybe 1 year into my journey as a business coach, I was making like $10K a month, doing pretty well. And the way that I was making $10K a month was primarily doing organic marketing. So I was going out there on Facebook. I was actually adding people as friends. I was DMing them, doing a lot of outreach. And that got me to around $5K a month, $10K a month, give or take, depending on the month. And I remember having a conversation with my mentor one day, and he was like, Jason, I think this would be a really good time for paid traffic for you. You got clarity on your niche. You got something that people are buying. You got some cash to be able to invest. Why don't you go out there and set up meta ads? I was like, okay. Well, I initially actually had some resistance because I hadn't run, ads. Well, that's not entirely true. When I spent some time running an Amazon private label business, I was selling first aid kits on Amazon, by the way. This was another wing of my entrepreneurial journey. I don't talk too much about this. It was a lot of fun. There's some crazy stories there. I'll get into that some other episode. But I'd run some sponsored traffic there and experimented with some things there. But the truth is I didn't have a lot of experience running paid traffic. But off the strength of my mentor's recommendation, I was like, okay, let me go out and do this. So I learned how to run ads. And essentially, I created a system in my business so that I could put $1 in and get lead flow coming into my business as a result. So every single day in our business today, we spend like close to $20,000 a month on paid traffic. It's been an awesome source of lead flow for us. And essentially what the buy strategy is you going out there and you trade your money for attention. You can convert into either audience, through, for example, like our ads, we have lead magnets. Like chances are you're probably here because at some point you were on Facebook and you clicked an ad of mine that was like, here's a free guide to grow your online business, or here's a nail your niche guide, or here's a messaging guide, or something like that we put together, and you put in your email address and you got that guide, and now you're on my email list and you're like, oh, this guy has a podcast, and now you're listening to this. And then maybe at some point, if you haven't already, you'll buy something. That is an example of buy, of essentially using your money and trading that money for attention, audience growth. Later on, the goal being you convert that into cash, enough cash to cover what you invested into the ads, and then go and repeat this whole process again. And it becomes this virtuous upward spiral if you're doing it well. So paid traffic buy, this strategy is often talked about like it's like the holy grail. And you'll see a lot of very successful online business owners, particularly folks who are scaling. I mean, this strategy took me from making 10K a month to like 60K a month. So it like 6x'd our business over the course of like 6 months. It was not like a crazy amount of time that it took to do this. So the amazing thing about this source of traffic is that there's a lot of scale and a lot of potential for leverage as well. Because when you're no longer trading your time for attention, we all have like a 24 hours in a day, right? We don't have a ton of time. We all have the same amount of time. So you can only do so much with your time. You can create more content. You can get better, more efficient at what you're doing. You can maybe even hire people to help you, and that can be a great way to create more leverage in a business. But when you're talking about trading your money for attention, you can theoretically make an unlimited amount of money if you structure your business in the right way. So you've decoupled your time from the business by doing this, by investing in this source of traffic, which means you have, again, theoretically, infinite or near infinite growth. It's a great way to scale and grow a business. You're not trading your time, which we only have a finite amount of. Super powerful. That's one big pro. The other thing I really like about buying traffic is that it's consistent. I can go every day, and we do this every day in our business. We basically have a budget, and it's like, okay, $500 a day or whatever it is, we're going to spend acquiring new leads in our business. And I pretty much know down to the dollar what our cost per lead is. So I can say with a high degree of accuracy, if I spend $500, I'm going to get this number of leads coming into my business every single day. So it creates this consistency and predictability in terms of lead flow in your business. It's a huge pro. What's the cons? I think there are a lot of them. The first thing is that you really got to have the foundations in your business dialed in for this to work. A lot of people come to me after investing thousands of dollars into paid traffic. They're like, ads don't work. I'm like, no, not exactly. Ads do work. But I look at their strategy and how they were doing it, and they generally oftentimes are missing a lot of the foundations in their business. They don't know who their niche is, or they're not entirely sure on their messaging, or they don't have an offer that people are really going to buy, or they don't have the back end dialed in their business. So they're focused so much on feeding new leads into the top of their business, but they don't have a great back end in place to be able to convert those leads into sales calls or clients or customers. It's really important when you're using this form of traffic that you've got the foundations in place in your business. Because Meta will gladly take your money. Any of these ad platforms, Google, will gladly take your money. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get results. So you can go out there right now and you spend thousands of dollars today on ads, but that doesn't mean that you're actually going to be able to convert that traffic into enough cash to be able to cover those ads. So this is something that is really important. You got to have those foundations in place before you do this. A lot of people miss this and they think ads don't work. No, ads absolutely work. But we got to make sure these things are in place first. The other thing is the obvious one, that in this type of a model, when you're using this form of traffic, you are paying for attention. So oftentimes this means that your margins are going to be lower if you're depending on a lot of paid traffic in your business. Full transparency, one of the reasons why we're starting this podcast and this YouTube channel is because when I look back over the last few years of my business, I've gotten a little bit lazy because it's so easy to just pour more money into paid traffic. And that's been the primary source of our lead flow over the last few years. But the downside to that is that you might have a lot of top line revenue, but generally, you might be spending, like in our business, we spend like a third of our actual revenue on ads. That's a lot of money. And I'm at this point in my business, I'm like, I don't want to continue to do that. Now, it's been great for us in terms of growth, but ideally, we want to diversify, and we don't want to have all of our eggs in one basket, basically. And when I look at my business today, that's kind of been the case. The other thing is I see a lot of people doing this with paid traffic is, they end up like having all their eggs in Meta, for example. And they're not developing any other assets in their business or any other form of traffic in their business. And then one day they wake up in the morning and they get an email from Meta, hey, your account got suspended. So we flagged too many of your ads. I had this happen to me, by the way. We were running ads on YouTube last year. And I woke up one day, just like doing my normal morning, and I open up my inbox and I got an email from YouTube, hey, your account's suspended. Can't begin to tell you what that felt like. And many people have experienced this too. It was like my heart sank. Luckily though, I didn't have all my eggs in one basket. I had stuff going on Meta. We had a YouTube channel that was growing. We had some organic stuff happening too. So my business didn't dry up overnight. Now I was able to get that account back, but it took almost a month, and a lot of people don't. So ideally, when it comes to all of these sources of traffic, you don't want to be heavily dependent on any one thing. It's okay if you're just starting out in your business. Get one thing working before you add more. But when I'm helping entrepreneurs grow and scale their businesses, we're looking at diversity because I want to minimize risk. I want to make sure that if one pillar goes down, the whole business doesn't go down with it. So some pros and cons to buying traffic. And this really is the first source of traffic that you can tap into in your business. Generally, I recommend it for entrepreneurs who already have a foundation established in their business. They have at least $5,000 to invest in paid traffic. Everything that we teach in terms of paid traffic, and we help people do this inside my high-level programs, Accelerator. We have literally like a whole course we include inside Accelerator when you sign up. It's called Limitless Leads that walks through step-by-step exactly how to set up paid traffic in your business. And the approach that I take around paid traffic is very much about investing for audience for the long term, which means you might pay $1 into paid traffic. You might not see that dollar convert into a client for 6 months. And that's okay with me because I take a very long-term perspective with almost everything that I do in terms of marketing. But if you're in the position where you got, $500 in the bank and you need to make a return on that initial $500 right away, you're just not in the position to be able to do paid traffic. So you need enough financial stability underneath you. The business needs to be in a place where you've got the foundations, your niche, your offer, you've got people who are buying something. Ideally, you've had success with organic already. These are usually the moments in time where I will recommend someone integrate buying traffic into their business. Super powerful strategy for the right person at the right time, but it can also cause a lot of problems if you integrate it too early. Hey friend, hope you're enjoying this episode of the podcast. And before we get back to it, if you're an established online business owner who's serious about unlocking your next level of income and impact and growth in your business, I want you to watch my free $1 Million online business training, where I walk through a 4-step roadmap I've personally used to sell well over $1 million of coaching, consulting, and courses online. It's going to make the journey of growing your business so much easier. I want to give this to you for free. All you got to do to access it is go to jasonmoss.com/growth. That's jasonmoss.com/GROWTH to get free access to this training right now. Now back to the episode. So that is our first source of traffic, buy. The second source is borrow. Borrowing is really simple. So I'll tell you a story to illustrate this. When I was maybe 2-3 years into my first real official online business, I would say, which was, when I started in 2016, this business helping musicians. I had a good friend of mine, his name was Rob, and he was running a very similar business as me. We were both helping musicians. And one day he reached out to me via email and he said, hey, Jason, I'm going to put together this summit and I'm going to invite all of the leading music educators in our space, and everyone's going to come together and we're all going to do an interview, and everyone's going to send out an email or two to their audience, and we're all going to come together and we're going to do this summit. And it's going to be a great way to basically cross-pollinate to make it so everyone's audiences can be introduced to each other and you can get in front of a lot of new people through this experience. Would you like to be a part of this? And I said, of course, that sounds awesome. So he interviewed me and I sent out a couple emails to my list and we did this big thing. I forget how many people signed up for it, but I remember I had maybe 300-400 leads or something that had opted into my email list off the back of that event. And it ended up generating me at that period of time, I think it was close to $15,000, which, I was doing $8K a month or something. So that was a lot of money at that stage of my business. I look back, I was like, that was a good investment of time based on where I was at. And this is a perfect example of the borrow strategy, of the second source of traffic we're going to talk about today, which is basically you getting in front of other people's audiences and creating a bridge back into your world. When you can get in front of other places where your people are already congregated together. You're not trying to, create that from scratch. There's so many people out there who have already built audiences in your niche. So if you can get in front of them and create some kind of experience that essentially forms a bridge to bring people back into your world, be an awesome way to grow your audience, get more leads, and ultimately sign more clients through the work that you do. This is a super powerful form of traffic. And a lot of people don't take advantage of this. I think the pros are, it's a really fast way to get traction. Because if you can get in front of a large audience of people in your niche, you can make things happen really quickly. You can get in front of 10,000 people at once versus if you're doing, organic marketing, you're creating a bunch of content, that's also good, but it's slow. Or if you're reaching out to people one-to-one, you're doing outreach, slow. Not to say those strategies aren't effective, but partnership traffic can be like pouring rocket fuel. In a very short period of time, you can get a big, quick spike or burst of traffic through doing a podcast interview or through participating as part of a conference or a summit or something where you're essentially getting in front of lots of people in someone else's audience at once. This is one of the things that's great about it. It also is a great way of really skimming the cream off the top of the highest quality people in somebody else's audience. So you already get people who are generally more qualified, they're more trusting as well, because when you get on somebody else's podcast, as an example, you're already positioned in a way where somebody else automatically sees you as an authority. And there's some trust that's built through the transference of trust from the person who's maybe hosting the podcast to you, just by that person interviewing you and the person saying, hey, this person really knows what they're doing. The people who are going to come into your audience through something like that are automatically going to trust you more. Versus if you just reach out to some random person cold on Facebook, that person has no idea who you are. There's no trust that's built. It's going to take more time for that person to warm up to you. This is one of the reasons why, looking back to that experience that I had with the summit that I did with my friend Rob, we were able to generate a good amount of sales off the back end pretty quickly because those people were the best people from everyone else's audience. They were the people who were opening the emails and opting in and clicking. Not just the random subscribers who hadn't opened anything in a month or two. These were the people who were engaged. And I had an opportunity through that experience to show up and position myself as an authority in that space. So these are the other reasons I think using this form of traffic is great. Because it speeds the whole process up of someone to getting to know you, getting to like you, getting to trust you. But there are some cons to this form of traffic as well. The biggest con, I think, is generally it takes some credibility or leverage for you to even get in front of these audiences in the first place. If I just started reaching out to random people on the internet who have podcasts and platforms, and I don't really have any platform of my own, I don't really have anything to offer those people, then why would they put me on the podcast? The best time, I think, to integrate this strategy and this form of traffic into your business is when you already have an established platform. You've already been able to create something of your own. And then you can go to another podcast and you can say, hey, we've got this email list of 10,000 subscribers. We have a lot of commonalities between our niches. I think there's a lot of people in my audience who would really love to hear more about what you're doing. I'd love to be able to introduce people in my audience to you. How do you feel about me hopping on a podcast? We could do a quick episode and I'll send it out to my email list afterwards. We can drive a bunch of traffic back to you. Because remember, they're playing the same game that you are. They want to grow their audiences too. So when you can come to established partners, platforms, places where people are congregated together and actually add value in those spaces, that is when you're much more likely to create success using this form of traffic. The other con that I find to this form of traffic, the borrow form of traffic, is that it creates short-term spikes in traffic. So you do a podcast, you might get a bunch of people right when the podcast comes out who opt in or who follow you online or who reach out to you. But then a couple weeks after the podcast airs, it's like it doesn't even exist. You might still get like a little trickle down the line. But generally, if you look at people who are using this form of traffic as the primary source of traffic in their business, it tends to create a lot of inconsistency, up and down, up and down. It's like they do the event, then there's a big spike, and then suddenly it's like everything's dried up and they're like scrambling to the next one. So I find usually this is a form of traffic you want to pair with something else on this list. We don't want to just rely on this independently. But it's a great thing to layer on top of everything else that you're doing. And it can be a great way of also supercharging your own authority and brand. Because when you can get on other people's podcasts or in front of other people's audiences, and you can also just take those clips from those and share them with your current audience. And people are like, oh, this person's on a bunch of podcasts. Like, seems like they're an expert. So there's some crossover benefits and ways that actually that can help position you and more authority in your current audience as well. All this being said, pros and cons to this way of building your audience. And it's not that this is something that you shouldn't do. It's just something to be aware of. So we got three forms of traffic, right? We've got buy, which we talked about. We've got borrow, which we talked about. What's the third source of traffic? This is create. Create. What is create? Well, I'll tell you another story to illustrate this. So when I was first starting my coaching business back in 2016, helping other musicians, I thought about what I wanted to do to market myself online. And initially, I started by writing a blog. So I was creating lots of content on my blog and just writing posts. And I was posting those posts in Facebook groups, which is a borrow strategy, by the way, getting in front of other people's audiences. But I was also optimizing those posts on my website so that they would show up in Google search. And then later on, I thought, there's probably a lot of musicians who are looking to record their music and mix their own music who are on YouTube searching for tips to help them produce music and mix music. And, I looked at the people in my niche who were doing really well, and I saw all of them had YouTube channels. And I was like, okay, well, let me start a YouTube channel. So every week for years, I published at least one video on this YouTube channel. And every single one of these videos was focused on tips and tricks to help people in my niche learn how to record their own music, how to mix it, how to basically make it sound like the records that they heard on the radio. And through publishing a video every single week, I built that YouTube channel from 0 to 70,000 subscribers. And in every single video, I also had a pitch to one of the lead magnets that I had created. So for example, if I was doing a video on, I'm trying to think of an example that would make sense, like how to make your vocals sound really professional. I might say in the video, hey, if you want to dive deeper, I actually put together this free vocal recording cheat sheet that covers some of the things we're not going to share in this video about how to record vocals that sound really good, which is the first step to success when it comes to making your vocals sound really professional. If you want to download that, just click the link in the description below. And so people would go to the link, and then there'd be a landing page where they would put in their email address. And through literally just doing this, I was able to build an email list with, I think it was like close to 40,000 subscribers. And off the back of that, build a 6-figure coaching business. Literally just from publishing on YouTube. I barely even did any social media. It was just YouTube and a blog. And 80% of the traffic came from YouTube. So this is an example of Create, the third source of traffic that we're going to talk about, which is basically you trading your time for either creating content or having conversations that bring new people into your business. So what I just talked about essentially is just me creating a bunch of content and publishing it in a place where other people can find it and other people are probably going to be searching for it. Another form of Create, I talked about this a little bit when I first started my business coaching business. The first year of my business, I primarily built that business using outreach. So every day I had a virtual assistant on my team. He would add 50 coaches as friends on my Facebook profile. And 25 of them on average would accept. And every day I would go in there, he'd actually send the first message. He would say, hey, saw your profile. Really like the work you're doing. Just want to connect. And then I'd hop in there and I'd take over the conversations and we'd go back and forth. And I'd ask people questions. I'd say, hey, tell me a little more about what you're up to. And I'd be curious. And if I had something I thought could help them, generally I'd redirect them to like a free training or our Facebook group, which is how we were able to grow our Facebook group, our first several hundred people into the group. We now have over 25,000 people, I think, in the group. But initially, the first few hundred was me just going out there and doing these conversations. And that got me to like 10K months, just doing this. Again, another form of Create. So content or conversations. These are the tools that you got to work with when it comes to creating traffic. And this is essentially you trading your time for attention. So you going out there, you creating content or going out there and having conversations and doing this yourself manually. Or, you have someone on your team do it. Or like what I did, which is have someone on your team support you in doing this. Now, there are pros and cons to this. The biggest pro, I think, is that this is the easiest way to get started. There's literally no barrier to entry. You can go out there and you can start creating content like this right now. So generally, when I look at people who are starting businesses online, the first thing that they do is they start doing stuff like this. They pick a social media platform. Let's say Instagram. They show up, they start creating reels where they start, reaching out to people, sending DMs. Or maybe it's LinkedIn. They start, doing outreach on LinkedIn. It's generally the place that most people get started. It's the easiest place to start. It's also the cheapest place to start because you don't have to spend any money. So that's another benefit for sure as well, which is why a lot of people who you look at like, okay, what are your unfair advantages or what do you have? Do you have an excess of money or do you have an excess of time? Many people in the earlier stage of their business, they don't have an excess of money, but they have an excess of time. So it's like, great, we can trade your time for attention through going out there and creating content. The other thing I really like about this form of traffic is that when you can invest on a daily basis into creating assets in your business that continue working for you, you can look down, you look back several years down the line after doing this, and you've got a business that has momentum that continues without you necessarily having to show up every single day and create more stuff. Like one of the reasons I love YouTube, when I stopped creating videos in my first coaching business, I had spent years, like 3 years, I had created probably 150, 200 videos. And after doing that for several years and stopping the content, those videos were still showing up every single day in YouTube's search engine. And they were still being recommended to people because people liked them. So literally for years afterwards, I still had hundreds of leads coming into the business every single month. I didn't have to show up because I had spent all that time building those assets. This is one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of social media, by the way. Is because you post a reel on social media, maybe it's going to get some initial traction, but for the most part, it's like a couple days later, it's like it didn't exist. Sometimes they take off a little bit later on, but for the most part, it's not that somebody's going to find a reel that you posted like months ago. They might, but there are other places that you can show up and publish, like YouTube, for example, that, those videos have potential to create traffic for years to come. So it's not that I'm not a fan of social media, but I think that ideally we want to have stuff that's going externally to social media as well. So we don't have all of our eggs in the social media basket, because otherwise you end up on a treadmill where you have to continue to show up every single day and create more and create more and create more. Otherwise, you don't get leads. And that, after a period of time, starts to feel pretty exhausting. So all this being said, the pros: no barrier to entry, doesn't really require any cash. The cons, the biggest con is that it's slow. It takes time to build an audience using organic traffic. Like, I know we just started this podcast. It's probably going to take 6 to 12 months before we start seeing significant lead flow into the business through these channels. And I'm okay with that, because I've played this game before. I'm just like, I love the process. I'd gladly just do this for free. I like talking. Hopefully you like listening. But I'm okay with that, because I know the long-term potential is going to be great. And I also know that these are assets that we can use to nurture our current audience. We can send these things out to our email list, and people can, build trust with me just by listening to them today. So there's some potential today as well, and benefit in the business today. But I know that in terms of a source of new leads into the business, it's going to take some time for these videos to show up, for these videos to start ranking, for people to start finding them. That's fine. But it is slow. So if you're using this form of traffic, a lot of this is people have like expectations. They're just going to start creating content, and like things are going to blow up right away, and they're just going to have a ton of leads. And in reality, it often takes a long time to start to see results. This is one of the things that's most frustrating about this form of traffic. It's also the reason most people give up. So that's one con. I mean, I'm trying to think of others. I think that's probably one of the biggest ones that I can think of. So you just have to be prepared that if you're going to use this form of traffic, that it is going to take some time. The other thing is there's a lot of people out there doing this. Because the barrier to entry is so low, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You can get started really quickly and easily, but everyone else can as well. So it means that there's so much noise out there when it comes to this space. When it comes to going out there, whether it's Reels, whether it's even YouTube, whether it's blogs, whether it's regardless of what kind of content you're creating, outreach, all of these forms of and channels of create traffic are crowded, which means you got to have a really good message. Your content's got to be good, and the bar just keeps going up. And I don't say this to discourage you. I think you can absolutely succeed and do really well with this form of traffic, but it takes intentionality. It takes really good content. It takes understanding the algorithms behind these platforms and what kinds of content they want to push to more people, and being able to optimize and tweak what it is that you're doing so that you can play that game, which again is not something that you learn overnight. It takes time to figure this stuff out. Great sources of traffic. Create is a great source of traffic, and I recommend every single person who's running an online business is doing this. Regardless of whether you got a bunch of paid traffic going, you're using buy or borrow, I think this is something that every online entrepreneur needs to do in some form, whether it's having some kind of social media platform or having YouTube going or having, there's different ways that we can integrate this. But ideally, you got this going in your business, because I really think this is the foundation that you build the other sources of traffic off as you go. So 3 sources of traffic you can use to get more leads in your business: buy, borrow, and create. The mix that's going to be right for you, a lot of this depends on where you're at in your business. Generally, if you're in the earlier stages, create's going to be the best place to start. If you got a lot of cash, buying traffic, great idea. If you got established audience or influence, borrow, usually a great place to tap into. But we got to integrate all of these pieces as you go. So you have diversity. Your eggs are not all in one basket. You don't end up like, if like me, when you get an email from YouTube saying your account was suspended, if you got all your eggs in that basket, you're screwed. So diversity becomes really important. So reflection question for you. Which of these 3 sources of traffic do you feel like represent the biggest opportunity for you right now in your online business? Maybe it's buy. It's like, I haven't experimented with paid traffic before, but I got the foundations in place in my business. I got some cash. Great. It's a great strategy to be able to layer on top of what you're doing to take things to the next level. Maybe it's borrow. Maybe it's like, okay, I got an audience going. I got something to offer. I got expertise. You even know a couple of people I could reach out to who have these podcasts or platforms. I just haven't done it yet. Great. Let's start with that. Or maybe it's create. I'm in the early stages. I feel like I need to be more visible and show up and, really invest in creating more of that platform for myself using my own content or maybe integrating outreach, start to build relationships and connections with people one-to-one. So what is, out of these 3 core sources of traffic, buy, borrow, create, what is your biggest opportunity? What is the one area that you need to tap into most? Great question to leave you with today. By the way, as I mentioned earlier, this episode, what we shared inside this episode today is really a very small piece of my 3-day marketing workshop that I just finished up about a week and a half ago. Not kidding you when I say this is the best workshop that I have ever run on marketing. If you want clarity on exactly what to do in order to market your online business, in order to grow your business, in order to know what to do next, to bring more leads, clients, sales into your business, there's just an insane amount of value inside that workshop. You'd be crazy not to check this out. It's on my website right now. You can go to jasonmoss.com. There's a link that says workshop. Go check that out. You can buy it. You can get access to the recordings right away. You can go through that today. If I would have known the stuff inside that workshop when I was in the earlier stage of my business, honestly, even as an established entrepreneur, it would have saved me years of frustration. So I'm excited to get to gift that to you. You can bypass some of the biggest mistakes that I've made along the way. And I hope you found this episode valuable. We got so much more good stuff to come. So stay tuned, and I will see you in the next episode.